I never thought I'd become the kind of woman who hides cameras in her own bedroom. But after 7 years of marriage and months of feeling like I was losing my mind, I didn't know what was real anymore. And I desperately needed proof of what was happening when I wasn't home. My husband Dean and I lived in Maple Grove, Minnesota. It's one of those perfectly normal suburban places where families mow their lawns every Saturday and everyone knows each other from the grocery store or church. We'd been married for 7 years, and while things weren't perfect, I thought we were okay. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Everything started changing last fall. At first, it was just little things that I tried to brush off. Dean stopped texting me during the day like he used to. He'd step outside to take phone calls, claiming they were work-minus related. When he started coming home late without calling, he blamed traffic. Then it was stress from his job. Then suddenly, I was being too clingy for even asking about it. The worst part wasn't the lies. It was how he made me feel like I was imagining everything. We'd sit on the couch watching TV, and he'd scoot away when I tried to touch his arm like my presence bothered him. When I try to start a conversation, he keeps staring at the screen with this annoyed expression. If I asked if something was wrong, he'd sigh heavily and tell me I was overthinking everything. There were no big fights, no dramatic confrontations. Just this cold, suffocating distance that made me feel like I was always doing something wrong, even when I was just existing in my own home. Around Christmas, I started noticing things in the house were off. My diary, the one I kept in the drawer next to our bed for years, would be moved slightly. Pages were bent in ways I didn't remember. Once, I found it closed with the pen placed in completely the wrong spot. I hadn't touched that diary in 2 days. Then came the weird comments from Dolores, Dean's mother. She'd always been passive-aggressive, but now her remarks felt targeted. During a family dinner, right after I mentioned missing Dean when he worked late, she said, "You always were dramatic with your feelings." Another time, completely out of nowhere, she said, "Sometimes people just fall out of love. It's not a crime." I hadn't told her anything about our problems, but somehow she knew exactly where to stick the knife. That's when I started suspecting something deeper than just marital problems. Not just cheating or lying, but something darker. I began feeling like they were both watching me, talking about me, making fun of me when I wasn't around. I'd wake up in the middle of the night with my heart racing, just knowing something was terribly wrong. Dean kept insisting I was crazy. He'd shake his head with this concerned expression and say I needed professional help because I was spiraling. Maybe I was spiraling, but not in the way he thought. One day in March, I ordered a small surveillance camera online. It was one of those nanny cam devices that looks exactly like a phone charger. I plugged it into the wall next to our dresser, and it had a micro SD card that would record video whenever it detected motion. I didn't tell anyone about it. Not my sister, not my best friend. Just me and my growing suspicion that I was living with people who were systematically destroying my sanity. 4 nights later, Dean told me he was staying home to rest while I went to pick up groceries. I left around 6:30 in the evening, and I wasn't gone more than 40 minutes. As soon as I got back, I went straight to the bathroom with the memory card in my laptop. I locked the door, sat on the toilet with the lid closed, and watched the footage that would change everything. Dean walked into our bedroom, and then Dolores followed him. She had a glass of wine in her hand like she was settling in for entertainment. Dean sat on our bed and pulled out my diary from the drawer. My stomach dropped as I watched him flip through the pages like it was a comic book. Then he left. Actually left. "She thinks I still love her," he said, loud and clear enough for the camera to pick up perfectly. Dolores laughed right along with him. "God, she writes like she's in high school. How do you even pretend to take her seriously?" Dean continued reading my most private thoughts out loud. "She's worried I'm cheating. I can feel him slipping away, but I don't know why. I just wish he'd look at me like he used to." They both laughed harder at that one, like my pain was the funniest joke they'd ever heard. "I can't believe she wrote all this crap," Dean said, shaking his head. Dolores nodded and took a sip of her wine. "You gave us all the material we need," she said, like I was some kind of show for their entertainment. Like I was a joke to them. I sat there in that bathroom, staring at the screen with my hands shaking. I had to pause the video 3 times just to stop myself from throwing the laptop across the room. I didn't cry, not yet. I just felt completely hollow, like I wasn't even a real person to them. That night, after Dean went to sleep, I transferred the footage to a USB drive. I planned to hide it somewhere safe, somewhere he'd never find it. I put the original SD card back in the camera so he wouldn't know I'd taken it, then drove the USB out to my car and locked it in the glove box under a stack of napkins and an old insurance card. I didn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and planned exactly how I was going to expose him. I was going to make him explain himself to everyone. His boss, his church friends, his mother's bridge group. I was going to make sure no one ever looked at him the same way again. But the next morning, everything fell apart in a way I never expected. I brought the USB drive inside and plugged it into my laptop. There was nothing there. No folders, no files. Just completely blank, like it had never existed. I unplugged it and tried again. Still nothing. I ran back outside to my car and opened the glove box. The USB drive was there, but it wasn't the one I had used. It was different. Same brand, same model, but I knew it wasn't mine. Someone had switched it. I ran back inside and tore through the bedroom, checking the fake charger camera. The memory card was gone, replaced with a brand new one that had never been used. That's when I realized Dean had found everything. He knew that I knew, and now he was covering his tracks. But more than that, he was playing games with me. He could have just confronted me or deleted the footage quietly. Instead, he chose to let me know that he'd top-played me. That was the moment something fundamental flipped inside me. He didn't just lie to me or betray me. He made a game out of destroying me. He and his mother had turned my pain into their entertainment. And when I tried to gather proof, he made sure I knew he was smarter than me. So I decided to make a new plan. A real one this time. Because I wasn't sad anymore. I wasn't confused or hurt or questioning my own sanity. I was going to systematically ruin them both, and I was going to enjoy every single second of it. After I realized Dean had found the footage and replaced everything, I didn't confront him immediately. I needed time to think strategically. If he knew I had been gathering evidence, he might become more careful, or worse, try to make me look unstable to anyone who might believe me. I had to stay quiet and let him keep underestimating me. So I started playing the part of the defeated wife. I smiled more often, made his coffee again in the mornings, laughed at his dry, empty jokes. I acted like the woman he probably thought I'd forgotten how to be, and he bought it completely. That smug confidence came back into his voice, the one I used to mistake for charm. Now I recognized it for what it really was, pure control. But behind that smile, I was planning everything with surgical precision. The first thing I did was get a new diary, but not for writing the truth. This one was bait. I filled it with carefully crafted fake entries designed to manipulate him. Things like I think he might be cheating, but I'm too scared to find out, and his mom is probably the only one who really loves him. I even wrote I'd never survive without him in big, dramatic letters. I left it half-minus open on the dresser where he'd be sure to see it. 2 days later, the page had a new crease in it. The pen had been moved. I smiled to myself. He was reading it just like I knew he would. I added more strategic entries. I wrote that I was taking sleeping pills at night and couldn't stay awake past 10 p.m., even if someone was moving around in the room. That was a complete lie. I stayed up every night until 2 in the morning, sitting in the dark with my phone recording, waiting to see what he'd do when he thought I was unconscious. That's when things got genuinely disturbing. One night around midnight, Dean came into the bedroom while I was pretending to sleep. My phone was tucked under the edge of my pillow with the camera pointed at him. He leaned over me, and I held my breath, keeping my body perfectly still. He just stood there watching me for the longest time. Then he whispered, "You always were too easy." I didn't move. I kept my breathing slow and steady while my heart pounded against my ribs. He walked out after a few minutes, but something had shifted. He started deleting messages from his phone more frequently, changing his passwords. One day, his laptop disappeared from the desk entirely. He claimed he'd spilled water on it, but I knew better. Then I got a message from an unknown number. It was a picture of me sleeping, taken from our bedroom doorway. No caption, no explanation. Just that image sent like a warning. I checked all the locks immediately. Everything was secure. But I understood what this was. He wanted me scared, wanted me to know he was watching, wanted me to feel powerless. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was done playing defensive games. I bought a small fireproof safe and hid it behind the dryer in our laundry room. Inside, I started collecting everything I'd need for the next phase. I created fake text message conversations using a burner phone I'd bought with cash. I made it look like Dean had been sending explicit, emotional messages to someone named Cassie. I crafted them carefully to sound authentic, with just the right mix of passion and cruelty. Then I mailed screenshots of these fake conversations to Dolores with no return address. I wanted her to wonder who was exposing her precious son. I wanted her to feel the sting of betrayal for once. The next time she came over, her eyes darted around the house like she didn't trust the walls anymore. Watching her discomfort felt incredibly satisfying. Then something happened that accelerated everything. Dean's boss called me directly, asking if Dean was okay. He said Dean had been missing meetings and acting erratic at work. I played dumb, said I didn't know anything was wrong. But the truth was, Dean was unraveling. Whatever control he thought he had over the situation, over me, it was slipping away. He looked more tired every day. His hands would shake when he thought I wasn't watching. He started staying out even later, and his shirts came home with makeup stains that definitely weren't from me. One night, I found a hotel key card in his jacket pocket. That's when I decided it was time to follow him. The next Thursday evening, Dean told me he had a late client dinner and left the house around 7. I waited exactly 10 minutes, then followed his car and mine, staying several cars back. It wasn't difficult. He wasn't paying attention to anything except getting to his destination. He drove to a cheap hotel on the edge of town. Not one of the big chain hotels, but the kind where the neon sign buzzes and half the parking spaces are empty. He parked and went directly to room 214. I waited in my car, and then I saw her. Not some random woman, not even someone I didn't know. It was Carly, my former best friend who had cut me out of her life almost a year ago after a stupid fight about money she'd borrowed and never paid back. She came out of room 214 wearing a hotel robe and carrying a bag of fast food like it was the most normal thing in the world. Like she hadn't been sleeping with my husband while pretending I didn't exist. I didn't cry or scream or have any kind of emotional breakdown. I took pictures. Clear, unmistakable pictures with timestamps. Then I drove home, sat in my car in the driveway for a long time, and stared at the steering wheel while everything clicked into place. This wasn't just cheating. This was a coordinated campaign. Dean, Dolores, and now Carly. They all thought I was weak, thought they could take from me, laugh at me, play with my emotions like I was some kind of toy. They were about to learn how wrong they were. And I was just getting started. After seeing Carly come out of that hotel room, something inside me finally snapped into perfect, cold focus. For months, I'd felt lost, hurt, humiliated, and unsure of what was real. But now I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Dean wasn't just sleeping with my former best friend. He was systematically breaking me down from every possible angle, and they were all in on it. Carly had ghosted me after our fight, and now I understood why. She hadn't just moved on from our friendship. She'd actively chosen him over me. The next day, I started building a comprehensive plan. This time, it wouldn't just be about catching them. I was going to destroy their comfort, their security, their reputations, one calculated move at a time. First, I called Carly's workplace. She worked reception at a pediatric dental office in town, one of those places where parents trusted her with their children's appointments. I used a voice modulator app on my phone and left a carefully worded message with her supervisor about a possible inappropriate relationship with a married client. I didn't give specific names, just enough information to plant serious doubt about her professionalism. Next, I accessed Dean's work email. He never logged out of his iPad, a careless mistake that would cost him everything. I forwarded the fake cheating messages I created between Dean and Cassie directly to his company's HR department. I also attached some of the real pictures I'd taken of him and Carly outside the hotel, with timestamps clearly visible. Again, I provided no explanations or context. Just enough evidence to make HR start asking very uncomfortable questions. Then I waited, and it worked faster than I'd even expected. 3 days later, Dean came home early, and I could tell immediately that he'd been drinking. His shirt was wrinkled, his face was red, and he slammed the front door hard enough to rattle the windows. "Where's the iPad?" he yelled from the kitchen. "Why?" He stormed into the living room. "You've been going through my stuff." I shrugged, maintaining perfect composure. "Why would I need to? You've been an open book lately." He stood there staring at me like he wanted to explode. Maybe he was finally realizing that I wasn't the same woman he'd been manipulating for months. He just walked upstairs and slammed the bedroom door. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. Dolores called the next morning. I didn't answer, so she showed up at my front door an hour later. I opened it, looked her dead in the eyes, and said, "You should call Carly. Ask her what she's been doing every Thursday." Her face dropped just slightly before she tried to recover. Don't try to turn this around on us. You've always been unstable. Dean told me you were spiraling. I leaned forward slightly. Then why is your son under HR review at his job? She blinked, her lips tightening into a thin line. You think you're smart, she said quietly. I smiled for the first time in months. No, Dolores. I just stopped playing dumb. But just when I thought I had all the pieces moving exactly where I wanted them, something hit me that I never saw coming. I received a letter in the mail with no return address. My name was written on the front in large black letters, and inside was a single type page that made my blood run cold. You're not the only one who knows how to dig. Check your therapist's records. Or should I say, your old therapist's records. I sat there frozen because only 2 people knew I'd gone to therapy the previous year, Dean and my sister Mariah. And Mariah had moved to Colorado 8 months ago. I hadn't heard from her since she left, which was unusual because she'd always been the type to insert herself into my business. Mariah had always been a little off, always looking for ways to get attention or create drama. She'd never liked Dean, but she also didn't like the idea of me being happy without her constant involvement in my life. I remembered her telling me once, I'm the only one who really gets you. Don't forget that. I didn't want to believe my own sister would betray me, but I had to find out. I dug through my old emails and found the contact information for Drive. Reynolds, my former therapist. When I called the office, the assistant told me something that shattered what was left of my trust in family. Actually, someone requested a transfer of your file about 3 months ago. To a new provider. A family member named Mariah W. I hung up immediately. My own sister had accessed my private therapy notes and fed them to Dean. That's how he knew about the sleeping pills I'd mentioned in fake diary entries. That's how he knew things I'd never said out loud to anyone except Drive. Reynolds. Mariah had given him the complete script for how to manipulate me. That night, I went outside and sat in the backyard for hours in the cold. They'd all been working together, Dean, Dolores, Carly, and now Mariah. But realizing that just meant one thing. They all had something to lose. And I was done playing defense. The next phase of my plan wasn't just about exposure. It was about permanent, public, and deeply personal punishment. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in that lawn chair, holding that letter and thinking about how my own sister had handed my deepest vulnerabilities to the man who was systematically destroying me. I thought about all of them minus Dean, Dolores, Carly, and Mariah minus, and I realized I'd been trying to play it safe. Careful, quiet, strategic, but restrained. But they hadn't been careful with me. They didn't hold back when they laughed at my pain, betrayed my trust, or whispered behind my back. So I decided I wasn't going to hold back either. I started with Mariah because she was the only one who didn't know that I knew about her betrayal. Mariah worked as a part-time counselor at a women's crisis center in Denver, a small community-funded place where vulnerable women sought help. I called and left a detailed message using a fake identity, claiming to be someone she'd previously counseled. I reported that she had crossed professional boundaries and illegally accessed confidential therapy files belonging to a family member. I included just enough personal information to make it sound completely credible. 2 days later, the director of the center called me directly, confused and deeply concerned about the allegations. I played the role of a devastated sister perfectly. I cried on the phone and said, she's my sister. I just wanted help, not this betrayal. They opened a formal ethics inquiry immediately. Mariah called me 3 times after that, and I ignored every call. On the 4th attempt, I answered and said simply, now we both know what it feels like to be exposed. She yelled, begged, and cursed me. She lost her counseling license within a month. Her apartment lease wasn't renewed, and she had to move back in with her father, who called me in tears asking what had happened to his daughters. I just told him, ask Mariah to explain. Carly was easier to destroy because she'd already made herself vulnerable. Remember those pictures of her and Dean at the hotel? I printed a complete set and mailed them to her boyfriend Ray, who I knew she'd been seeing for about a year. She'd always called him her backup plan in case Dean lost interest. I made sure Ray could see the timestamps, the faces, the unmistakable evidence of what she'd been doing every Thursday night. Then I mailed the same pictures to the HR department of the dental clinic where she worked, along with a simple note thought you should know who's greeting your patients. Check room 214 every Thursday. By the following week, she was out of a job. Ray posted a long, angry Facebooks calling her a liar, cheater, and coward, and he tagged her so everyone in their social circle could see it. Carly tried to call me too, leaving a tearful voicemail asking, "Why would you do this? I thought we were past everything between us." I didn't respond. I just smiled and moved on to the final target. Destroying Dean required more careful planning, but it was also the most satisfying part of the entire operation. First, I wrote a comprehensive letter detailing everything he had done. The emotional abuse, the systematic gaslighting, the cheating, reading my diary aloud for entertainment, the stolen therapy files. I included exact quotes and screenshots of everything I could document. I sent copies of this letter, anonymously, to his boss's HR manager, 3 prominent members of his church, and most importantly, to his father minus a man who had always hated Dolores and believed she ruined Dean's character. Then I uploaded a carefully edited video clipped to a burner YouTube account. I used the footage from the fake sleeping diary incident, blurring faces but keeping voices crystal clear. I titled it "What a Husband and His Mother Say About a Wife When They Think She's Asleep." It got over 40,000 views in the first week. Dean was fired within 2 days of that video going public. Officially, the company didn't give a specific reason, but I knew it would become public embarrassments, especially when it involved mocking mental health struggles. Dolores tried to defend him on Facebook, posting that I was mentally unstable and seeking revenge. I commented on her post using an old account you were laughing while reading her private diary. "You deserve each other." That comment got shared by dozens of people in our small town. Dolores deleted her entire Facebook account 2 days later, but the damage was permanent. But I wasn't finished yet. I scheduled a meeting with Dean at a quiet cafe in town, telling him I wanted to discuss reconciliation. He showed up wearing that familiar smug expression, probably thinking I was going to beg him to take me back. Instead, I handed him a plain manila envelope. Inside were printed copies of the hotel pictures, screenshots of the HR emails, a link to the YouTube video, a copy of the restraining order I'd filed that morning, and divorce papers prepared by the lawyer I'd hired the week before. His face went through an entire spectrum of emotions: confusion, recognition, anger, and finally, something that looked like genuine fear. "You can't do this," he said, his voice shaking. I looked him directly in the eyes for what I knew would be the last time. "You already did this, Dean. You and your little entertainment show with your mother. I'm just making sure the curtain comes down properly." He started to stand up to leave, but I had one more thing to say. "I was never the weak one in this marriage. You just needed me to believe I was." 6 months later, I live in a small, peaceful apartment across town. It's quiet here, and that quiet feels like freedom. I go to real therapy once a week now, minus genuine sessions, with a new therapist. No shared files, no family members involved. Dean moved back in with Dolores, and according to someone from our old church, they barely speak to each other anymore. He hasn't found a new job. Carly left town entirely, and Mariah is still trying to get licensed to counsel again somewhere that will take her. As for me, I work part-minus time at an independent bookstore now. I watch people come and go, flipping through pages, searching for meaning in fictional stories. They have no idea that the darkest, most twisted stories are often completely real. I learned something important from all of this. Revenge doesn't erase the past or make you forget the pain they caused, but it serves a different purpose. It reminds people like them that you don't get to systematically tear someone down and walk away clean. You don't get to mock a woman's deepest pain and expect her to stay silent. You don't get to take everything from someone and expect them to just sit there and accept it. I didn't just sit there. I watched, I waited, I planned, and then I made sure every single one of them learned a lesson they'll never forget. The woman they tried to break didn't break at all. Instead, she burned down the entire stage they built for their cruel little show, and she made sure they were all still on it when it went up in flames.